Well, yesterday we tried to cover some rough ground about poetry, possibility of an epic in this age, and the idea of an epic being more and more subjective and not idea of a story which is given up now. And you saw that it's not the size of the event which gives inspiration for an epic, but significance of the event which is seen and felt by the poet. Now, we saw Ashwapati's history yesterday partly. That Ashwapati is not the childless king that he is in the legend in the Mahabharata, the Indian epic, but he is here a representative of human race engaged in the cultural activity of humanity, trying to evolve higher and higher values of life. That is Ashwapati. He is a representative, he is a symbol of the human race, symbol of humanity, representative of mankind, and he is making an effort to embody higher and higher values of life so as to find out what is the goal of man. That is what Ashwapati is after. And Savitri is born to him as a gift from the Divine Mother because he pleaded in the house of the Spirit, in the house of the Divine, when he reached by his development the Divine consciousness, he prayed to the Divine for an emanation of the Divine to be sent down on earth so that man's problem would be solved. Man's problem of ignorance and subjection to death was to be solved. That was what he was seeking. And in his own efforts, he found that man, if left alone, would not be able to solve his problems. So he appealed to the Supreme Mother and asked for a boon so that an emanation or a part of her, so to say, would be sent down to earth to help mankind to overcome the limits of ignorance and death. That is the problem. And the story, as we recounted yesterday, is that Savitri, the young princess in the legend, who here becomes the emanation of the Supreme Mother sent down on earth. You see, that is what she becomes here. And she is here to help man to solve the problem of overcoming ignorance and limitations of death. That is the character of Savitri. And Ashwapati is trying now here, what we are here trying to say is that behind the story, facade of the legend and the symbol, what is the problem that is being worked out? What does the poet want to tell us? First, is the universe a mechanical determinism? Is this universe run by inconscient laws in which no amount of interference from human will or any other consciousness is able to interfere and make a change? Is it a mechanical determinism set at work so as to bring about inevitable results which can be foreseen if you know the forces at work? That is what Narada's prediction comes to. Narada saw the forces that are at work in the life of Satyavan and said that after 1 year, this Satyavan, the young man selected by Savitri, the princess, will die. So then the problem is the universe or the working of the cosmos a blind mechanical determinism of forces in which no interference of any subjective element called will is able to interfere? Or is it possible to change the determinism of nature, what appears to be inevitable? Is there at work in the universe a categorical imperative which cannot be set aside by intervention either of a human or a divine will? That is a problem. That is one. And then, is the present determinism of the world final? People say that is human nature. And by saying human nature, they think that they're explaining anything. It doesn't explain anything. It means this is a mystery. When you say this is human nature, but why it is so? Is it final, the determinism at present obtaining in nature, process, the laws that are in work in the material world, in the vital world, in the human world, are they final? Are they such that you can say they are for all eternity, unchangeable? Savitri's answer to both of these, it is not so. That there is no mechanical determinism at work, but a conscious intervention is possible because the universe is based upon a consciousness. That is one. And the present laws obtaining are not a doom. That is what Savitri is facing. Death of Satyavan is the doom. Doom in the sense of inevitable, calamity, inevitable unpleasant result against which you can do nothing. That is a doom. Well, can doom be averted? It can. That is what we talked yesterday. It is not by human force that you can do it. It was very clear. What is it? A magic lever is suddenly caught that moves the veil in affable's timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can join man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle becomes the common law. You see, a lonely thought can become omnipotent. That is what we quoted yesterday, if you remember. You see, that there is a mechanism, there is a methodology which can upset this balance, which can change this present equation of forces at work in the universe. And that intervention man is capable of invoking. It's a divine intervention because then it comes also to whether the dynamism of the world is only mechanical. Savitri answers no, it's a conscious mechanism at work, a conscious dynamism. In this dynamism, is it possible to bring an intervention of a force that can be, or consciousness that can be called supreme or divine? Then it brings ultimately the picture of or function of a supreme consciousness. Is God or divinity or whoever is ultimate reality only static condition of consciousness, or is it dynamic in its movement? Is a dynamic intervention possible? Well, Savitri answers yes, it is possible. That is, it works out the process of evolution of the cosmic energy and shows that the present equation is only a working equation, a provisional order, necessitated by a process of evolution which has to lead to a goal. And when active movement is made towards the goal, then it will be found that the present equation can be changed. It is not necessarily a categorical imperative, something that you cannot oppose, something that is so fixed that there is no way out of it. In physics, there is a component of forces, they will say. You see, a component of force is this line of force in which when two forces are working, you can predict the line along which the resultant will come, as they say, the resultant force or the resultant line of force. Now, if two lines of force are working, in physics, they would represent it something like that, you see. That if one force is acting this way and another force is acting this way, then you know that the resultant most probably will be this way. It won't go this way or this way, but it will be this way. Now that is the resultant of forces. Savitri says that now is universal forces are working, and the result is that Satyavan must die. Well, is it an equation which you cannot change? Savitri says you can. You see, that's one. There is no inevitability about things in life because world or universe is a conscious movement. And being conscious movement, consciousness can intervene. All operations that are there are, provisional, necessary for the temporary order through which mankind is passing. That is one. And then secondly, indirectly, Ashwapati, the king, the character who is the father of Savitri, shows that man's present constitution is only a constitution which is in movement. That is man only a sum total of mind, life and body? Is man only mind plus life, vital force, plus body, physical being? You see? Well, that is the question, and it says no. These are his instruments. These are the instruments. The one who uses is the soul. So if she realizes on this side of the equation its inner entity, then the present equation is that there is ignorance and mortality. Ignorance and mortality. Mortal consciousness. These are the result of present equation. When this equation changes by intervention or realization of the soul, then this equation, which is this present, what you call the doom, is bound to change. If man is only always and eternally equal to mind and life and body movements and nature, which is, well, then the present equation is a working order will go on. But it is not bound to go on. Point is, man can evoke from within himself his true entity, his soul, his divine spark, potentiality that is in him, now hidden, but capable of being awakened. Well, if he makes an effort to awaken that hidden entity which he really is, then this equation which is now has the appearance of a binding law will change and must change. Otherwise, we are in a scheme of a mechanical determinism out of which we have no escape. Otherwise, the universe would be reduced to a mechanical scheme of determination in which there is no escape for human individual. They have to all the time think everything is predetermined. That's what some of the philosophers are trying to bother their head about just now in some of the symposiums. Whether there is a determinism at work. There is. Gita said it hundreds of years ago. There is a determinism of nature at work today, not determinism of the spirit. The determinism at present that is working is determinism of nature. Gita says that there is no freedom in the determinism of nature. Nature is Prakriti, the universal force which is working. What is working at present is determinism of nature. And this determinism of nature is a bondage to the spirit. So far as the human experience is concerned, it's an expression of a cosmic being, but to the human individual, to the human being, it appears or it feels like a bondage. And freedom consists in getting out of the determinism of nature and creating a determinism of the spirit. When determinism of the spirit is evoked, so to say, or brought into movement, then there is freedom. Freedom even in action, not only in consciousness. So man is not only mental, vital and physical being, but is a spirit, a divine spark, a secret potentiality which can be evoked into a dynamic movement in life. So that man has to start with the idea, with the conception that he is a spirit, and that he can evoke the spirit into movement in his mental life, in his vital life, in his physical life. Well, then the determinism of nature would change. Now that is one. It shows that the present constitution of man is not final. That man as at present constituted is a transitional being. And because he is transitional, he has all the characteristics of an imperfect being. And that is a galling sense of imperfection or, inability is a sign that he is still under the process. You see, it is a provisional being. And that to which he has to rise is what is pointed out by by Ashwapati in the first 5 cantos of the first book. First 5 cantos of the first book occupy the development of Ashwapati releasing himself from the bondage of mental, vital and physical nature, realizing his true self, and then finding out the nature and functioning of the true spirit or true self which man is. Then he finds that he is not confined to individual formula of his being. You take man, we take this size of man, that is his vertebra, will be the best representation of the man. Now, if he realizes his true self, which is behind his nature inside, then he finds that this self is not only here. This self is capable of an expansion in consciousness. He can go on. So this one that is here is all and is also beyond all. You see, what he does is that he expands. When he realizes his true self here, he feels that it is not confined to this body and this mind and this life here, but that it is capable of an expansion, to other levels of consciousness. That the self is in the body, but body is only a small pedestal over which something very vast is standing and working. It is like a small foothold or a small support for the higher working. Now it is ego bound and therefore feels that I am only matter and I am only a handful of dust. That's what man ordinarily might feel and justify, because that is the determinism of nature. So long as he is within the determinism of nature, he always feels that What is man? Man is the most insignificant thing going in the world. Quite right. But as far as his nature is concerned, as soon as he goes into what he is essentially, then he finds that he is vast. He is equal to the cosmos. There is nothing in the cosmos which is not one with him. He is one with the whole universe and more than the universe because the whole universe is not manifested. You take another scheme. This is, you see, vital world, mental world, and so on. You go on expansion of the world, which he described. Ashwapati's second book of Savitri, in which Ashwapati's voyages are described, are, I'll give that schema a little bit. We take this as the manifested universe. Manifested universe. This is suppose the limit of the manifested universe. Earth is here. Put Earth somewhere in a very small corner because even to represent there would be too big a representation for Earth. It is too small for being represented. But put Earth here. Now man from here is expanding. And he has come here to the limit of manifested universe. That's the limit. Ashwapati has come here in the second book. Second book, he goes one after another, covering the levels. This is potential universe. Universe which can manifest itself but has not yet manifested in actuality, but it can be manifested here. So what Ashwapati is doing is from here he is breaking the limit of, well, we have already broken the limit of space, is it not? And we are trying to go to some other, well, planet, materially, physically. Well, here is break psychologically. What? There is no much difference. We break the sound barrier, we break the barrier of ether, we break the barrier of gravitation. Nowadays, is it not? And science is taking up the work. It's not as if it was somewhere in the air. Well, this is also practical. If man takes up the adventure of the spirit, if he takes up the adventure of the spirit, well, he can break this barrier of the manifested universe, mental consciousness, intellectual consciousness, and go to the potential universe. This is called House of the Spirit. That is the third book of Savitri. House of the Spirit. One can represent it differently. This is a rough way of representing it, you see. Now, then he enters into here. And when he enters here, he meets the Supreme Mother of the universe. You see, the creatrix or the mother, we call it for short, the mother of the universe. And he prays to her that we want to solve the problem of man here. And if you want man to succeed, you kindly send down by your grace your own emanation here. So an emanation is asked for from the potential universe, from the house of the spirit, to be sent down to earth so that man may be able to solve his problem because he is now confined to his mind and life and body. He is very much confined here. But then this ray must come down on earth. Savitri is that ray sent down on earth to help man to overcome the limits of his present universe in which he is living. That is the third book here, where Ashwapati reaches this house of the spirit, meets the Supreme Mother, carries the whole aspiration of mankind to her, and asks for a boon in the sense of emanation to be sent down to the earth. And the Supreme Mother grants the boon, and then Savitri is born. So Savitri is not therefore only a princess of a childless king, but she is the result of aspiration of the whole earth. That is why in the second canto of the first book it says, a world's desire compelled her mortal birth. Second canto of the first book begins, a world's desire compelled her mortal birth. Savitri took up birth on earth not as a result of the childlessness of the king, but a world's desire which was carried by Ashwapati to the Supreme, and a prayer was made to the Divine, and the prayer was granted. Therefore, a world's desire compelled her mortal birth. You understand that? Well, I am giving you the line so just to connect our mind with the text, that's all. But that is the background, that Ashwapati, when he tries to find out what man is, he will find that there are capacities lying dormant in man which can be awakened. We know it a little bit in hypnotism and telepathy and transference and certain faith cure and certain phenomena. People know something about the smattering of it in the occult. But in the deep spiritual process, it is much more tangible and concrete, the inner worlds. So he finds that potential powers, dormant capacities are there in man which can be awakened, by which one can break the limit of his present natural constitution and evoke in him other powers which will be adequate to express the divinity that is within him. So he awakens those powers within himself, realizes his self, and when he realizes his self, he says that, well, I am only standing on one atom of myself, really speaking. I am as wide as a cosmos. You see, he widens one after another. And the great realizations which come to him are too long to describe in a small compass. You see, what he finds is that there are worlds. See, from here, Earth's consciousness, when he first goes into the vital world, he finds that this vital world can go right up to this. This vital world has an opening right up to there. You see? The only vital world can go up to there, almost to the limit of the absolute or at limit of the spirit, out of the spirit. It has an opening right to there. Well, he goes to the mental world and finds that the mental world has an opening right up to there. It can go up to here, from here to. You see, there is a height of the vital and there is a depth of the vital. So that if you take away this representation, then the vital will be something like that, with an abyss which will also show you below the height of the life and the depth of the life, and this is the normality. He finds that when he expands his consciousness from physical human being to an inner being, then he finds that he is a vital being as wide as the cosmos. This is life belt, you pull it life universe, which is independent of earth life. All life is not confined to earth. There is a big belt of life force and life universe in which vital forces, vital beings, independent of earth, remain with their own different constitution. They have different kinds of bodies, different kinds of movement, different kinds of laws governing their own plane of consciousness. And then he saw that that vital world, of course, man from earth expands only to here. But if he allows this world, then this world can rise like a cone. You see, it is like a cone that can rise like that. I'm putting it a circle here, it's difficult to represent it, but it's like a solid cone, you see here, that can rise just like that. Almost a thin veil divides it from the absolute, from the infinite. So each instrument of human nature is capable of directly almost contacting the Supreme Consciousness. That is why the mind cannot govern the vital being fully, cannot perfect it, because vital has its own right to approach the Supreme. The life force in man would not submit permanently to the dictate of either ethics or reason, because life force has its own individual independent fulfillment, and it would want it. It is because of this experience that he realized that vital directly can approach the divine if it is turned towards the divine. And vital doesn't want to turn towards the divine in 99 cases. Therefore, you find that life is not divine. Yes, that's true. Because life doesn't want to turn to the divine. But it will not submit to mind. It will only submit if at all it turns to the divine, because it can directly approach the divine and have its own fulfillment. Its two great impulses are, well, possession and delight or enjoyment, power and enjoyment. Well, it will have fully that only when it reaches the divine. Mind will always curb it. Mind will always try to control the vital. And vital will always submit only temporarily, provisionally. It will ultimately break this because it finds no fulfillment in it. Here Ashtrapati found that in the vital he could see. Similarly, the same thing happened when he went to the mental level. That mind was capable. Now this life, it has upward cone and it has also downward cone. So that it has depth here which is negative. As this is positive upward movement, there is a depth which is negative movement. So that there is a hell, so to say, a lower movement of life in which life is anti-divine, not merely ignorant. Make a distinction between ignorance and anti-divinity. Life, when it is ignorant, well, is ignorant. When it is anti-divine, it opposes any higher movement. And when you go to these levels of life, you find not only ignorance but anti-divinity, opposition to anything high. As it has height like Himalaya, it has depth also, into which life falls. And those depths also are the depths to which human consciousness is subject, because they have all relation with the earth. They have all relation with the earth. So any human being opening to those forces, well, will make the operation of those forces on earth possible. That is why we find perversity, unnatural movement of life forces, or anti-divinity, anything. There are people constituted such that they will never convert themselves to anything high. Do what you like, they will not, because they are not human in this true sense of the term. They are not human because it is not human ignorance. It is the lower forces that have been allowed to come into life and possess the human being. He is not conscious of this possession. That's all. Most of the forces that come into man are not their own. Determinism of nature only is at work in universe. Nature is deciding everything. In 99 cases, 90 cases out of 100. Because man thinks he is free, but he is not free. Now, if he is open to lower forces, it's lower forces that decide. And in the lower forces, there is definite anti-divinity. That is really the explanation of permanence of pain and ignorance in life. Pain and ignorance are not constituted by a direct, creation or direct will from above. They are an indirect result of universe coming out of an inconscience. The inconscience has given rise to this universe. And as a byproduct of this inconscience, well, anti-divinity, or you can say forces that are titanic, or forces that are asuric, or forces that embody anti-divine element in the life have come into existence. You take recently the case of man like Hitler. Why go further? It's not very necessary to go back to mythology. You go back to the past, only just war, and a man, individual like Hitler, you do what you like, you cannot convert him. Cannot convert him. It's impossible, because he's not man. He's not man in the true sense of the term, man in the sense of a human ignorant being. He has allowed himself to be governed allowed a mastery of his own vital nature and whole nature by a force from below, from there. And that force wants to replace and take the throne of the divine. The ego is there inflated, it inflates and wants to govern everything by steamrollering all opposition. Divine is omnipotent and therefore gives man full liberty to differ, to defy, and to deny God. But when the ego is inflated and wants to replace the divine and take the throne of the divine, well, it steamrollers everybody. That's what it does. Because it is not omnipotent, you see. It is only a huge power arrived at by organization and by domination over, the will of the collectivity, so as to carry some impress of almost something like omnipotence. It tries to feel omnipotence, is not. But it behaves as if it is enormous, but not omnipotent and infinite. But that is where you are. So here Ashupati, expanding, saw that there were levels of consciousness which he was passing through, and the universe was himself. So he got self-knowledge. Now you got it by self-knowledge from within. By turning his gaze within, he got self-knowledge. One, world knowledge from around, or universe knowledge, you can call it. World knowledge or universal knowledge from around himself. And God knowledge from above. That is the three books of Savitri, first three books of Savitri, roughly. First 5 book cantos, first book is self-knowledge, knowledge of the self, independent of mind, life and body, a divine entity possible of realization by evoking faculties which are dormant in man now. Second, when the self is realized, the self is found to be not limited to the egoistic unit or egoistic constitution in which it happens to function, but that it is wide as a cosmos. Thirdly, it has a possibility of overcoming or breaking the limit of manifested universe or universe as it is now functioning. That there is a universe which can be evoked into manifestation, a potential universe which can be brought here. Truth consciousness, intuitional consciousness, inspirational consciousness, revelatory power, overmind, supermind. Well, one can open degrees by degrees, one can open the human consciousness to the higher levels and bring them down. That is a potential universe which is waiting for manifestation here. Well, Ashwapati realized this and carried the aspiration of the human consciousness to the supreme house of the spirit and brought back Savitri's birth as a boon. That is the end of the third book. That she grants a boon, that a child will be born who will be emanation of the Supreme Mother to help man to conquer the formula of ignorance and death. Now, yes. How is this done? How is this done? That is to say, how is how far can the present formula of nature or the determinism of nature be changed? How far can it be changed and by what process? Here Ashwapati does the process of inward turn. The knowledge that he acquires is by taking an inward turn of consciousness. By inward turn, Ashwapati is able to go through this and acquire this knowledge. An inward turn of consciousness in which he awakens the potentialities that are lying dormant. But Savitri's work is much more difficult because she has actually to come down into the present formula of ignorance and change it. By what process does Savitri change it? That is it. She goes through different process, you see. Savitri goes through a process in which now you take the manifested universe. She is in the manifested universe, you see. And small part of earth. This is yes, that's it. You see, she is there, and now she is going through the constitution of this universe. Then she finds there are three powers. You imagine it like that, like a solid cone, you see. Then she is penetrating inside. So the first depth into which she goes, the second depth into which she goes, the third depth into which she goes, like that, you see. First she meets one power, this is within. Now if you represent it like a half cut, if you like that, then she is penetrating here like that, you see. Oh no, not there, from here up, like that, you see. She is coming from here like that. Yes, you see, this is the limit. This circle is done halfway. I cut it like a section. If the section is cut, then Savitri, who is here, this is the earth, and she is moving inward. You see, inwards into the universal constitution inside. She is not going expanding like Ashwapati outside. We saw Ashwapati was from here, from earth. He was going and expanding till he found that he was reaching the frontiers of eternity, as Savitri calls there in the poem. He would reach the frontiers of eternity and came to the house of the spirit. She is penetrating inside the constitution of the universe. She is not expanding but getting in. And here she meets universal powers that are managing the cosmos today. And she finds that they are all imperfect. The powers which are at work in the universe are imperfect, cosmic powers themselves. So she says, I will bring another power. I will bring a power from the divine and you will be perfected. That is how she penetrates into the deepest, constitution of the cosmos and sees that the powers that are actually at work are imperfect and they are to be perfected by bringing from above, from the divine, a greater power of perfection in the universal scheme itself. Savitri does that function. So the two yogas are a little different, you see. Ashwapati is an expansion of from here he goes on expanding. Savitri goes on penetrating in. inward, you see. She goes inside into the earth consciousness. She is not doing with the cosmic movement, because earth itself is a fragment and a residue. You remember yesterday we had that sentence. It's a fragment and a residue. So it contains everything that is here. The whole expansion is contained there. In the fragment, the mystic whole. In one of his poems, he says, in the fragment, the mystic whole. The whole of it is contained. It's not necessary for her to expand out, because whatever is there in the cosmos is there here in the earth. The earth is therefore a residue, you see, and a fragment of the whole. So if she penetrates into the constitution of the fragment, she also influences the constitution of the cosmos, because fragment and whole is only symbol, one connected with the other. There is no lack of relation. Now the problem is that of pain, you see. Why pain at all? That in the 6th book you find the answer to this problem. Because Savitri was to become a widow according to the prophecy of Narada, who came at the time when she selected Satyavan as her husband, or was going to select. She said she was going to marry Satyavan. Then the king and the queen asked Narada, the divine sage, to cast the horoscope, find out the astrological position, you see. And the Narada, after casting the horoscope, said that this is a good match, they are two very good people, but Satyavan will die after 1 year. You understand? Now this brings in the problem of pain. As first in the first book we saw, the problem is whether there is any blind mechanical determinism at work or not. That is one. Now here the same problem is taking the shape of how human being reacts to such a determinism. If there is a determinism in nature in which a young man who is innocent or has committed no fault of his own is destined, or is condemned to die after 1 year of his marriage, well, what is this mechanism at work? Is it mechanical determinism? One thing. And secondly, why such an unmerited pain or suffering inflicted on the human being? If a supreme consciousness and mercy or knowledge is at work as the ultimate reality, why should there be even the existence of pain? You see, subjectively, this determinism brings about reactions of ignorance and pain on the part of man. Man feels the pain. Why the mechanism should be such as to cause pain at all? What is the place of pain in the scheme of things? That problem also 6th book gives an answer to that, 6th and 7th, particularly 6th. And it indirectly answers the question, is suffering a permanent element of cosmic constitution? The epic says no. The last answer of the epic is that it is not. Pain happens to be the present element in the working of the universe, because it is necessary. There is a place for it. In the economy of the universe, there is some utility of pain, therefore pain is there. But it's not as if pain was not there, there would be no universe. No. There can be a universe, there would be a universe, and pain could be eliminated from it, and yet it would remain a universe. Now, that problem also is answered in the 6th book, you see, and 7th book. Savitri's yoga gives that answer, that she finds out that in the present constitution there is a lack, and the potential universe can supply that element which is lacking. When that element enters into the cosmic constitution, pain can be eliminated because it would be necessary. Now it is necessary because man is living only in his mind and his vital being and his physical being. But if he begins to live in his inner spirit, then he would not require the pressure or the drive or the the goad of pain to make him feel, where is delight? You see, pain is indirectly a question put by the inner self that I must be happy, and why am I not happy? That's all. Pain comes to that ultimately. Why should I be what I am, and why I am not better than I am? Ignorance and pain are therefore not necessarily the permanent element of any cosmic scheme. At least of this one, they are not. That is the answer which Savitri gives. And then also the question, who created pain? That also is answered there. Pain is is the result of the choice of the soul. You see, choice of the supreme eternity that is at work. It is the choice is of the self, and not imposition. It's not as it were somebody came and said you will become, subject to pain. No, the soul and the self, the essential divinity, selected a condition which human being feels as pain. It did not see this is pain and I like it. No, please don't want to mistake. The spirit, when it chooses, it has no mind. It chooses out of quite different considerations, different view, different way of looking at things, you see. But it's a choice of the spirit. Choice not as pain, but choice as a process. You see, it becomes pain when you go through it. It ceases to be pain when you look at it from above, from somewhere else. It is not pain at all. You see, when a doctor operates on a patient, he only sees that this is a cure, is it not? When he operates on a patient, he knows that this way he will be cured. The patient only knows it's pain. It is not that. He knows that this must get out of it. So the human soul, when it selects a situation which, when it takes up the human limitations of mind, life and body, become pain to its experience, really speaking, it was not for the sake of pain that it was chosen, but for the sake of the passage through which it was to lead to something different from pain, different than pain, you see, something other than pain altogether. Thou art thyself the author of thy pain, it says, and so on. And then, can the divine act in life? Can divine be made to act in situations in life? Savitri answers yes. That is the only solution for man's problems, in fact. That to make the divine a dynamic element in one's life. Now, we take up Ashapati's yoga. You see, little bit of what he has been doing. What did he do? First, he released his own self and soul from the limitation of his mind, life, and body, which are his instrument, and he became conscious that there is some element in me which is independent of my life, independent of my thoughts, independent of my desires, independent of my physical being. And this consciousness, he puts it in this way. His heart was smitten by the beam of the eternal. His heart was smitten by the beam of the eternal. When he searched into himself, he didn't see the full glory of the inner being, no. But a beam of the eternal, struck his heart. Yes, he was smitten by the beam of the eternal. An inward turn was necessary. He also saw that if he was to permanently remain in the inner self, then this inner turn becomes also permanent. He must be always turned inwards, and whatever he does outward must be a result of the dictation or guidance of the inner being, the inner turn which he takes. An inward turn is necessary for this, and then he came to change the working of his own nature. And he found that there is a static oneness and a dynamic power descending into him. He felt that a static oneness and a dynamic power were coming down into him when he turned inwards. And then the ego limits were broken slowly. That is to say, he puts it poetically in this way. His island ego joined the continent. His island ego joined the continent. That is called inspiration, not intellectual statement, you see? Yes. Then he broke into occult worlds and attained a stillness and a peace. But he found that he could not retain any higher state for a long time. It would not remain for a very long time. It would come and go, you see. It would, see, what he says is very finely put there, you see. Only a while at first these heavenlier states, these large, wide-poised upliftings could endure. The high and luminous tension breaks too soon. the body's stone stillness, and the life's hushed trance, the breathless might and calm of silent mind. Or slowly they fail as sets a golden day. The restless nether members tire of peace. A nostalgia of old little works and joys, a need to call back the small familiar selves, to tread the accustomed and the inferior way, the need to rest in a natural poise of fall. As a child who learns to walk can walk not long, replace the Titan will forever to climb. That is why the heavenlier state do not last very long in the beginning. Well, that is what Ashwapati found himself doing. And then he saw that movement of ascent and descent is taking place. He goes up, comes down. Sometimes he comes down with a gain, sometimes he comes down dull, and so on. And he found pure perception growing, intuition coming, inspiration coming, experience of the self also, glimpses of it. And he then felt the double aspect in him, soul and nature. What he found was that there was a being that was one independent, and another being which was bound nature. He could take up this position, he could also take up this position. Duplicate, double being, soul and nature. Nature imperfect, soul capable of possible perfection. And he more and more put himself in the witness self and found that the more this Purusha, the witness self, went on, remembering his true being, the greater was the extent to which nature also responded to it. When the soul forgot his own being and identified with mind, well, he was one with nature and running with ideas, thoughts, impulses, movement of desire, and so on. When he separated himself, he found that if the soul could be impersonal, detached, capable of withholding his consent, nature would feel the rain. You see, nature would feel also obstructed in the natural flow of ignorance. So that gradually he found that if his soul could go on changing the status from mere witness to one who gives consent, to one who can control, one who can, give direction, well, nature will correspondingly undergo a change. What he found was a double aspect, and in this double aspect, when the Purusha knows his true self and remembers his true being, nature also changes and reveals her powers that are lying dormant in her own constitution. Nature also shows that I am not dull, I am not always bound to be ignorant, I have also treasures of knowledge and power. But the Purusha must give the lead. Then he found the cause and aim of universal evolution. The Purusha at present is bound in nature, as we saw the self, because he pursues nature for the delight, for the fulfillment, for the will which he finds in her. But when he finds that all that running will be, without any issue, well, he separates himself and puts his own consciousness into its true throne, so to say, and then he is the transcendent one who can transcend nature. Because the aim is to new create life. The adventure of consciousness that is in the universe, the process of universal evolution is meant to lead to a new creation of life, new create life in terms of the spirit, not to continue this round of subjection to nature. And then he found that gradually the divine began to turn, as he says here, that this soul in him began to assume its divinity, and then he found the divine began to turn the mud engine to heaven use. To heaven use. The divine began to use this mud engine to a divine use. Then he found that this engine is made of mud, but divine is taking it for heavenly use. Yes. to turn this mud engine to divine use, he found. And then he saw, in the light of this experience, that existence, a divine experiment. Existence, a divine experiment. Cosmos, the soul's opportunity. The soul's opportunity. This is what Ashwapati found. Existence, a divine experiment. Cosmos, the soul's opportunity. This is what he realized when he put himself more and more in communication with his inner self. The problem for him was how to bring this higher consciousness and power more and more into life. This knowledge he got, but the process, how to bring it into life. This was the, first by maintaining the inward turn, one. And secondly, he found that if he had to do that, humanity molded actions less and humanity molded his action less and less. First he had to do was not to allow humanity to dictate to him what he was to do. Humanity molded his actions less and less, that's one. And because his own consciousness was wider than the world. His own consciousness had become wider than the world. Now, was it not necessary for him to go out to save mankind? He said, yes, it did. He did go to save mankind in this way. He says, his spirit's stillness helped the toiling world. His spirit's stillness helped the toiling world. So that it was not necessary for him to, go out and become philanthropic. It was not always necessary. His spirit's stillness helped the toiling world. How did he? Because he felt that he was a colonist from immortality. He was a colonist from immortality. He felt that he was not of this earth, but he was a colonist from immortality. Yes, his mind therefore became like a fire assailing heaven, charged with the aspiration for realizing the divine, so that his mind was like a fire assailing heaven. And he realized that this bodily appearance is not all. I'm quoting some lines from the passage of the first 5 cantos, you see. This bodily appearance is not all. A death-bound littleness is not all we are. A death-bound littleness is not all we are. A spirit that is the flame of God abides, immortal in our mortal poverty. This is how he saw Ashwapati. These are the words of Ashwapati when he first went into contact with his inner being. That bodily appearance is not all. A death-bound littleness is not all we are. A spirit that is the flame of God abides, immortal in our mortal poverty. This is how he saw Ashwapati. These are the words of Ashwapati when he first went into contact with his inner being. That bodily appearance is not all. A death-bound littleness is not all we are. A spirit that is the flame of God abides, immortal in our mortal poverty. Well, from the human realm of ideals, he rose to this world of self, you see, and awakening higher powers in himself, he went to the frontiers of eternity, as we said. And then he was attracted by that world of the spirit, you see, the eternal. And realizing the static oneness and dynamic power, he found that the power was descending in him now and then and changing his constitution and began to work in him. Less and less he was being molded by humanity, and powers awoke in him which were beyond the form and went to the formless. And then he saw that he had in him the gaze of the Supreme, what he calls the he attained the gaze of the Supreme. So to say, when he looked out, it was not his body that was looking or his mind, but the consciousness of the Supreme that was looking out from his gaze, and felt his consciousness wider than the world. And this still consciousness which sustained the whole world was also attained by him. And gradually he rooted his being into the infinite and based his life upon the eternal. You see, he began to root his consciousness and being into the infinite and based his life upon the eternal. There were ups and downs. Short a while the conditions lasted, but the gravitational pull of lower life was there, which he had to overcome. And nature was ever prepared to keep pace with him if the soul in him demanded a height of nature. If the soul became free, nature also attempted to become free. If the soul was pure, nature also became pure. If the soul was powerful, nature also became powerful. You see? So nature followed the lead of the spirit in him. How did the higher power now and then come down? He says, well, it came down sometime like the rain. Well, one experience of his you can have. So many experiences of Ashwapati that is a world of experience. Okay? And even the 5 cantos would take about 5 months. So, union of the real with the unique. The gaze of the alone from every face. Gaze of the alone from every face. Presence of the eternal in the hours. This made whole the fragmented being we are here. The union of the real with the unique, gaze of the alone from every face, presence of the eternal in the hours, made whole the fragmented being or fractional being which we are here. If our being is to be completely integrated, well, this is the realization. Now you see, generally what happens is, the unique tends to become egoistic. Every individual wants to be unique, unique in the sense of his egoism. No, union of the real with the unique. Uniqueness consists in identity with the real. Presence of the alone from every face. There are no two in the world. And therefore, every gaze, one meets the gaze of the alone, one being. The gaze of the alone from every face. Multiplicity is not real. Multiplicity is only for variation of expression and manifestation. So that one meets the gaze of the alone, one being only, from every face. Realization of the one in all, and the presence of the eternal in the hours. Life is not evanescent. It's not merely passing and nothing permanent. The eternal is constantly present in the hours. Well, then the fragmented being which man is becomes integrated and whole, you see. Some idea of the... Yes, he attained tranquility, serenity, purity, peace, steady, and equality, and the occasional, intervention of higher powers in him. After the release of his self, Ashwapati lived in the light of his realization, and he saw that man is the growing image of God. Man is nothing else but the growing image of God. And he can realize this by awakening the potential powers which are dormant in him now. He saw that he was at the end of the manifested universe and a witness. And he saw the goal of this world which appears unconscious. Unconscious of the goal, he saw that where this unconscious earth is going, moving towards. he puts it like that. You see, the expression is fine poetically. Look at that also. The earth goddess toils across. Why the earth goddess toils across sands of time? To what is the earth goddess moving? You see, toils across the sands of time. Earth goddess is moving across the sands of time. To what goal? He saw the goal and saw that it was not merely a movement in the sands of time only, but there was a goal to which it was reaching. Because she was waiting to grow unexpectedly divine. In the movement, she was wanting or wishing to realize to become unexpectedly divine. And well, now we get to some sort of quotation which is more important. What is the nature of the realization of Ashwapati when he first began? The earth's uplook to a remote unknown is a preface only of the epic climb of human soul from his flat earthly state to a discovery of a greater self and the far gleam of an eternal light. This world is a beginning and a base. This world is a beginning and a base where life and mind erect their structured dreams. An unborn power must build reality. This world is a beginning and a base where what is happening? Where life and mind erect their structured dreams. Life has a dream, mind has a dream, and they are trying to create something here in consonance, in keeping with the dream. They want to realize the dream on earth. This world being a beginning and a base, on this beginning and a base, life is doing something. It is a dream of perfection, power, strength, attainment to success, whatever it is. Well, it's trying to create here. Mind has some conception of what life must be. Well, it's trying to create here. But they are structured dreams. An unborn power must build reality. If you want to build reality, then a power which is not yet born has to be brought here. A power of truth, power of the divine consciousness, power of the soul, power of the spirit in man, the essential divinity in man. An unborn power must build reality. If reality is to be built, not structured dreams, yes, then an unborn power must be brought into play or must be brought to act. Now, you know that in India there is a tradition in which people give you a small compass. This is called sutra, a small epigrammatic expression in which the whole essential quintessence of philosophy is contained. They will say, you see, the true, the good, and the beautiful. Is it not? Mm-hmm. They will call it in Indian language Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, beautiful. Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, true, the good and the beautiful. Or they will say, well, you see, Satyam, truth, knowledge, infinity. Truth, knowledge, infinity.
Does that belong to the true?
Truth, knowledge, infinity is Upanishad. Satya, you see, it is called Satyam Dhanam Anantam. You see, I don't say Satyam because you will get baffled by the Sanskrit terms, that's all. Satyam, Gnanam, Anantam. Truth, knowledge, infinity. That's how it is expressed sometimes, is it? Or in Vedic language they will say Satyam Ritam Brahat. Satyam Ritam Brihat. It means truth, right, vast. Well, this contains sometimes the quintessence of the whole philosophical outlook. The whole philosophy can be, brought into a small compass by putting all what do you want to say? Well, true, good and beautiful, Satyam Shivam Sundaram, that's the ultimate functioning of some highest reality. If you ask a philosophical system, one who has seen it, well, he will try to put it like that. Or truth, knowledge and infinity, you see. Satyam Gnanam Anantam Brahma, they will say like that in the Upanishadic language. Or they will say Satyam Gnanam Anantam or Satyam Ritam Brihat. The true, the right, the vast.
Brihat.
Brihat. The vast. It is a Vedic term, it's also, from that the word Brahman also comes. Now, he gives here his quintessence of his philosophy. The absolute, the perfect, the alone. Well, that is his formula. The absolute, the perfect, the alone. That is Sri Aurobindo's formula. The absolute, the perfect, the alone. As soon as you say the perfect, the universe is already brought into existence, you see. Because perfection cannot exist if there is none else around it, either less perfect or imperfect, or at least some paraphernalia of perfection is necessary for perfection to be really perfection, is it not, to be perfect? So the absolute, the perfect, the alone. There is no duality, it is alone. It is absolute, free from manifestation and even from the cosmos, and yet it is perfect. Well, now I'll give you the full passage in which you will see the whole philosophy is contained in a nutshell, you see. The absolute, the perfect, the alone, he has. He has fashioned. I'm not giving the full passage, but lines which are important. He has fashioned these countless persons of oneself. He has fashioned these countless persons of oneself. He lives in all who lived in his vast alone. Who lived in his vast alone. Space is himself, and time is only he. The passage reads, the absolute, the perfect, the alone has called out of the silence's mute force, where she lay in the featureless and formless hush, guarding from time by her immobile sleep the ineffable puissance of his solitude. That line I didn't give because it is only explaining how it came into existence, you see, the world. The absolute, the perfect, the alone has entered with his silence into space. Has entered with his silence into space. Has entered with his silence into space. He has fashioned these countless persons of oneself. He lives in all who lived in his vast alone. Space is himself and time is only he. Then the next change is a little variation. The absolute, the perfect, the immune. Absolute, the perfect, the immune. Now he makes a change in the text, you see. It is a 15 lines passage, not very long, only one passage. Then he says the absolutely perfectly immune, one who is in us, one who is in us as our secret self, as our secret self, our mask of imperfection, our mask of imperfection has assumed, he has made, he has made this tenement of flesh his own, his own, his image, image in the human measure, in the human measure cast, that absolute, perfect, the immune. Now more note the difference. He is already in the universe. He has entered with his silence into space, is it not? Yes. He has entered with his silence into space and he has become time. Yes. So then has he now been, as you say, touched by elements of ignorance and unconsciousness and materiality and limitations of mind and life and body and matter? No, he is free. He is not yet contaminated. He is immune. He is here immune. Because if he went through a transformation or a change, then there was no time, no possibility of saving out of it, is it not? He is there but immune. So absolute and perfect and alone, when he enters the universe, the absolute and perfect is immune. It is also immune. Yes, he is one who is not. Yes, you see the difference. Yeah, that explains the universe and its working and the presence of the divine behind. Because the immune is there. In everyone, the immune is there. Quite immune from whatever his appearance. In the most wicked also he is there immune. You understand? The Upanishad said it differently. It said like that. Saparyagat shukram akayam avrunam asnaviram shuddham apapaviddam. Not pierced by evil, not pierced by sin. You see? Apapaviddam, that is the sentence. But here the rendering in one word, immune. Well, you understand that the divine is in everybody, immune from whatever his imperfections. And then one who is in us as our secret self, this immune. Our mask of imperfection is assumed. He has made this tenement of flesh his own. His image in the human measure cast. He has cast his image into the measure of humanity. Small image. That, now next line is, that means in order that to his divine measure we might rise. His image in the human measure cast, that to his divine measure we might rise. Then, in a figure of divinity, in a figure of divinity, the Maker shall recast us, recast us. The Maker shall recast us and impose a plan of Godhead, a plan of Godhead on the mortal's mold, on the mortal's mold. You see, he has kept the image of casting throughout, and you'll see how marvelously it works out in perfect, consonance with his highest philosophy. You see, the highest philosophy is there, but it's marvelously poetic. You see, yes, a plan of Godhead on the mortal's mold, lifting lifting our finite minds to His infinite. That is second part of the the quotation. That means in order that to His divine measure we might rise. He has cast His image into the human mold so that we might rise to His divine measure. He has cast His mold into a small human image with the idea that the human must rise to the divine image. You see, that to His divine measure we might rise. When we do that, then in a figure of divinity, the Maker shall recast us and impose a plan of Godhead on the mortal's mold, lifting our finite minds to His infinite mind. Then when that takes place, what will happen? Is giving out the picture of the world, you see. Touching the moment with eternity. It is single moment with eternity. Then eternity will not be away from the moment. Moment will be touched by eternity. This transfiguration is earth's due to heaven. This transfiguration is earth's due to heaven. A mutual death binds man to the supreme. A mutual death binds man to the supreme. His nature we must put on as He put ours. Now you get some idea of the central. Yes. Touching the moment with eternity. Our mind which is infinite mind, finite mind which is infinite, touching the moment with eternity. This transfiguration from human to the divine is earth's due to heaven, is the debt which earth owes to heaven. A mutual debt binds man to the supreme. Well, as he has cast himself in the human mold, the human has to rise to the divine mold. You see? Yes. His nature we must put on as he put ours. He has put on the human nature. Well, we have to put on his divine nature. As he put ours, we are sons of God. And must be even as he. His human portion, we must grow divine. Our life is a paradox with God for key. Our life is a paradox with God for key. You get some central idea of his outlook, you see? Yes. Now, I'll read one or two passages just to finish up with the subject matter of Ashwapati's yoga and his attainment, you see. Often inspiration with her lightning feet. How does inspiration come to a human being? Oft inspiration with her lightning feet, a sudden messenger from the all-seeing tops, traversed the soundless corridors of his mind. Oft inspiration with her lightning feet, a sudden messenger from the all-seeing tops, traversed the soundless corridors of his mind, bringing a rhythmic sense of hidden things. Or how did it work sometimes? Sometimes it worked. A great nude arm of splendor suddenly arose and rent the gauze opaque of nations. Her lifted fingers, keen, unthinkable tip, bared with a stab of flame, the closed beyond. Bared means opened, with a stab of flame, the closed beyond. That which is close to the mind was opened with a stab of flame by the inspiration when it came. And I awake in, well, if you can sit for the whole night, you can go over the whole thing. Yes. And I awake in voiceless trance of, you see, and I awake in voiceless heights of trance, a mind plucking at the unimaginable, overleaping with a soul and perilous bound, the high black wall hiding superconscience. She broke inspiration. She broke with inspired speech for sight and plundered the unknowable's vast estate. Plundered the estate of the unknowable. Inspiration, you see. Yes, and that's how when it is mild in the case of a poet, how it is you find in Wordsworth. You find in Wordsworth a passage in which he has got that eye, but not this power of the eye. But look at how Wordsworth has felt it. That serene and blessed mood in which the affections gently lead us on until the breath of this corporeal frame and even the motion of our human blood almost suspended, we are laid asleep in body and become a living soul, while with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. Tinton Abbey, you will see that. You see the same experience in a milder degree you find in some poets like that. You see the coming in of the superconscious in many inspired and intuitive writings of many people you find. But you don't find it at one place like an electrical belt fixed in the sky of poetic empyrean. That is Savitri, you see. An aspiration in the night's profound, seed of a perishing body and half-lit mind, uplifts its lonely tongue of conscious fire towards undying light forever lost. The master of existence lurks in us. He plays at hide and seek with his own force. In nature's instrument light a secret God. He has made the universe his pastimes field. All knowing, he accepts our darkened state. Divine, he wears shapes of animal or man. Eternal, he ascends to fate and time. Immortal, dallies with mortality. And get some idea of what Savitri is. There is a passage of man is conceived as a sailor in time, you see. This sailor on the flow of time, man. This world matter's slow discoverer who, launched into this small corporeal birth, has learnt his craft, naval craft, in tiny bays of self, but dares at last the unplumbed infinitudes, a voyager upon eternity's seas. He begins with time and is now trying to voyage to eternity. At first he hugs the shore and shuns the breaths, dares not to affront the far off perilous main. He travels close to familiar coasts and finds new haven in storm-troubled isles, or, guided by a sure compass in his thought, he plunges through deep, through a bright haze that hides the stars, steering on the trade routes of ignorance. A seeker of the island of the blessed, he leaves at last the lands, crosses the ultimate seas. He turns to eternal things, his symbol quest. Life changes for him the time-constructed scenes, its image veiling infinity. Earth's border recede, the terrestrial air hangs round him no longer in translucent veil. The eyes of mortal body plunge their gaze into eyes that look upon eternity. He crosses the boundaries of the unseen and passes over the edge of mortal sight to new vision of himself and new vision of things. His is a search of darkness for the light, of mortal life for immortality. A sailor on the inconscient's fathomless sea, he voyages through starry world of thought on matter's deck to a spiritual sun. He carries her sealed orders in his breast. Late he will know, opening the mystic script, whether to a blank port in the unseen he goes, or armed with her fear to discover a new mind, body in the city of God, and enshrine the immortal in his glorious house, and make the finite one with infinity. Across the salt waste of endless years, her ocean winds impel his errant boat, the cosmic waters splashing as he goes, a rumor around him, a danger and a call. And never can the mighty traveler rest, and never can the mystic void cease, till the nascent dusk is lifted from man's soul, and the morns of Godhead has overtaken his nights. There is a plan in the mother's deep world whim, a purpose in her vast and random game, which is to be fulfilled in life. And this has a similarity to a passage in his other poem called Ahana, the morn, you see, the dawn, symbolic. There is another rhythm there, you see. Something or someone, a force or a spirit, conscious, creative, wonderful, shaped out a world to inherit, sailing in time through the straits of today to the seas of tomorrow. Worlds and their wonders, suns and their flamings, earth and her nations, voyages endless of mind, through the surges of its fate-tossed creations, star upon star throbbing out in the silence of infinite spaces, species on species, bodies on bodies, faces on faces, souls without number crossing through time towards eternity, eons crowding on eons, loving and battled, dirges and peons, and the human march is going toward the morn of the divine. It also is working out of the spirit only. Nature is the power of the spirit. Nature is not an independent entity who can do what it likes. It does what it likes so long as the spirit wants it to be free. Yes, it does. It remains ignorant because the spirit permits and is enjoying the ignorance. Well, it's all right. But as soon as he becomes conscious of his divine origin, the moment he withdraws, the nature will gradually tend to change. That is the process. And there is a higher nature. You see, in his scheme, you will always find this double strain that when you say the divine, people have no idea that there is a divine nature also. There is a nature which is divine, and that is perfect. And that has a double aspect in its universal working. When it works in the universe, it puts on a double aspect of, you see, ignorance and knowledge. You see? So that it is possible from here to transform to this nature. The divine nature, you see, that is because that is working in the universe, the one power that is divine divides into two, ignorant and knowledge, you see. And from ignorance, it is possible to transform the nature into divine. He, for the first time, brought it definitely to a point to make it clear, because that was very important for Earth evolution, you see. That if nature was left alone, then spirit was always perfect. Spirit is not to attain perfection, spirit is perfect by its very constitution. Essentially, it is always perfect. If perfection has a meaning, it has a meaning when perfection is manifested in nature. Otherwise, spirit is essentially perfect. It may be now playing at imperfection, but perfection is his birthright. But nature also is claimant to perfection and capable of transformation. That Sri Aurobindo for the first time put it in rational term and also gave a process that you do the transformation in three stages. You don't do the transformation in one stage. In the human nature, when it begins to change itself, Human nature means mental nature, vital nature, physical nature. From this, when it first changes, the first stage it will reach is psychicization. The second stage it will reach is universalization or spiritualization. And the third stage it reaches is supramentalization or divine nature. This is the divine nature. You see, from human nature to the divine, the stages is 1, 2, and 3. The first stage is psychicization, second is universalization or spiritualization, and the third is supramentalization or transformation of the truth consciousness. So that the transformation is done in 3 stages, not all at once. So it's a process also, and also a philosophical rationale of why it is necessary, because otherwise the problem won't be solved. Nature must be transformed slowly or so, we just see with speed, but it has to be done. And it is done by the bringing in of the higher power. It's not done by man. This transformation is not brought about by human power. This is by man opening to the higher consciousness, as Ashwapati did open and found that the descent was taking place in him. And he was able to ascend and descend. Well, with every descent, some element of the divine power enters into human nature every time. More of peace, more of control, more of detachment, more of purity. Every time comes down. You see, every time one goes to the higher consciousness, he comes down with some element of the divine nature in the human nature. So that element goes on tending to increase. The process is not achieved by human endeavor. It is achieved by aid of the divine, the higher nature that is working from. You see, the higher nature of which we spoke. The higher nature is there, and it is to that this nature opens. This human nature opens to the higher nature and goes through these 3 stages. So the transformation cannot be attained by human effort alone. Man cannot say, I will transform myself into the divine. It's not possible. He must open to the spiritual consciousness, of the divine consciousness, and allow it to transform. The divine consciousness will transform because perfection is in the divine consciousness already present. It has not to attain perfection. Just as a man cannot put himself on his own shoulders, one cannot create perfection. Yes, that's it. See? Yeah, somebody else has to do it. You see, the divine has to give him the perfection, but he has to want it and he has to open to it. These are the 2 conditions, wanting and opening. If he doesn't want and doesn't open, quite free to remain ignorant. There is no compulsion to freedom and knowledge.